study that history. And if you haven't seen and figured out by now that we are in a battle between socialism and capitalism for the life of this country, you need to wake up, because we are. I am a guy that used to be, and you might find this interesting, especially considering what I do now, but I was the guy that didn't pay attention to politics. I couldn't stand all of the political nonsense going on the TV and, you know, everything else. And essentially, I was the guy that finally got fed up and, you know, said, something's got to give here. Something's got to change. Mm-hmm. And so I learned at one point about what a PCP was. I was getting involved in things like the freedom movement. We're talking back in, trying to remember the movement name, but back in the late 90s, you know, when people were having big meetings and everything all over the country, and it was really the start of the new conservative movement or whatever. There's a name for it that's just escaping me, but anyway. And so I was a registered independent because I couldn't stand either party, and truth be told, even though I'm now the chair of the Marion County Republican Party, have been for 4 years almost, I still can't stand parties too much sometimes. Mm-hmm. And the more I learn about history, the more I can't stand them. But they're a necessary evil, because that's how our government is run. Or at least how the two-party system is, because it really is more or less two parties. You can be a third party if you want, but then you don't have a voice. So, who am I? I'm the guy that wandered into politics about 10 years ago, became a PCP in my county party, and I worked with a group of people who are now, most of them, fairly prominent in the Republican Party, and or they've, you know, in other parts of the state. We called ourselves a digital action networking group, and we got in and we started to make some changes. I was a chair of my neighborhood association for 10 years, about 20 years ago. Got to deal with City Hall and planning commissions and, you know, all of that. And then later wandered into the partisan politics rink into Marion County Republicans, became a PCP, went to a platform convention, and then some guy said, "Hey, you ever consider being vice chair?" And I'm like, no. So I ended up doing that for 4 years. And then I took over as chair about 4 years ago. And in that time, I've been elected and reelected to Congressional District 5 leadership. I was the vice chair of Congressional District 5 for the last 4 years. And then I was just elected as the alternate chair of Congressional District 5 for the next 4 years. So that means I sit on the state leadership team and have a vote in statewide stuff, is what the Republican Party is doing here in the state of Oregon. Got to know a lot of people. My wife has run on the school board. She's been on the Salem-Keizer School Board in her second term now, has 2.5 years left. She also made a run for House District 22, the seat Anna Kachikev is running for right now.
That's right, she was telling me about that.
Yep. And so I got to see not only how the partisan politics in the party works, but also what the candidate side of it looks like. So I got way more information than I ever bargained for. I mean, learning about how the partisan politics works, how the PACs work, all of that. So now my goal is hopefully, maybe you'll see a leadership change in Marion County upcoming, but I don't plan to go anywhere. I just plan to take what we've done in Marion County, which has worked really well, and help other counties in CD5 do more of that, and a focus really on education, because the one thing I have come to figure out, and this leads right into your second question, is I can do this partisan politics game till I'm blue in the face, and nothing's going to change until one thing happens. And that is that, I wish I had one right next to me, the requisite knowledge on the U.S. Constitution and state constitutions of Joe average public has to increase. The unless they learn that document better and understand how our government is supposed to function as original intent, and we actually start to return to that, nothing's going to change. You can be Democrat, doesn't matter. It really doesn't. Nothing is going to change. There is a silent majority. I won't discount that. And there are a lot of people that are waking up and figuring some things out. Hey, things are stinking in Denmark and we need to fix some stuff here. And I do think you'll see that. I think Trump will win a second term personally by a landslide. I don't think it'll be reported that way. I expect a whole bunch of things.
Are you ever going to run for office?
Not likely, because I'm the guy that works full-time job. Now, my wife is retired, but her service on the school board and other things is definitely a full-time job. But no, I have not retired just yet. Maybe after that happens, we'll see. I have talked about, running for a city council seat or whatever, but I don't know. At this moment, I have no plans to.
Well, once you are ready, you've got my vote. I never did ask, what do you do for a living currently?
My claim to fame is I keep police officers from putting bullet holes in their computers. So I do IT work. I work for the city of Kaiser, have for almost 7 years maybe. And before that, I was a federal contractor for the U.S. Department of Transportation, Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. And so I did that for 7 or 8 years. I was a mechanical engineer way back when, got into IT. But yeah, I had a really hard time working for a federal agency that, as I learned more and more about the Constitution, I had this thing in my head, is like, I have a hard time working for you when I don't think you should even exist. So I, true to my roots, want to get that local is where things really should be in government. I got an opportunity to come work for the city of Kaiser and jumped on it. Took quite a bit of cut and pay to do it, but it has been worth it. And I'm very, very happy with where I work. It's a good group of people.
The deadline to register to vote in Oregon is just around the corner. I think we've got another 2 weeks left to register as many people. Do you have any tips for us that are trying to educate and motivate voters?
As to why to vote? Well, I think they're living it. I mean, everything from COVID to taxes to all the nonsense they tried the last couple of years in the legislature, things that affected you guys directly in the medical freedom world and Slavic vote and old believers. HB 3063, hello, that was a wake-up call, wasn't it? That's what got your community actually going, hey, hold on a minute, we got to get involved in this. But the bottom line is everyone should hopefully see their freedoms slipping away from them little by little. And some of us have been seeing this for a long time. And some of us, are just now waking up to it. And it isn't that people don't care. It's just families are priorities and whatever. And, standard human nature is until I feel it personally and it hurts me, I don't want to get involved in it. Politics is dirty and ugly and they're a bunch of creeps anyway and whatever. To some extent, that's true. But it affects everyday life. There was a guy a long time ago, I'm trying to remember, Plato. Remember him? He once said, those who refuse to engage in politics ultimately end up being ruled by their inferiors. Hello, you're here. So that's the bottom line. If you don't like the way your state is treating you, the way your freedoms are leaving, et cetera, your vote is the first and foremost thing you can do to protect that. I think anymore it is far insufficient. You have to go further than that. You actually need to get into the fight and try to change things. But the vote is your first tool to try to affect change. So absolutely, if you're not registered to vote, do so.
What do you say to the Republicans in Oregon who feel like their vote just doesn't change anything?
It does. The challenge is, again, back to the education. most people that I have talked to don't really care for socialism once they understand what it is.
Mm.
And my premise here, and this is something I've pushed the state party chairman, and he is completely in agreement with it. We talked just the other night. It's like, if we educate people on the Constitution, on the history of this country, and how our government is supposed to run the right way, and if they value their freedoms, and once they understand how it works, and you set down the platforms of the Democrat and the Republican Party side by side, and you look at them and what they stand for, I don't have to convince you to sign up to be a Republican. Unless you're totally brainwashed and have gone, been in our public school system forever and got this notion that socialism is good, and don't understand that social justice and social this and social that is all just little bites of the same pie called socialism, aka communism with lipstick on, then they don't get it. But if they do get it, and I can educate someone and bring them up to that requisite experience, a knowledge of what's going on here, I don't have to tell them how to vote. They're going to vote for the conservative candidate, whether it's a Republican or an independent or whoever it might be. Most all of them, though, are Republicans nowadays. And you saw that in the House and the Senate last year. Who walked out to try and stop all the bad, terrible bills that were going on? The Republicans did. Okay, there's some decent Democrats there. Betsy Johnson, bless her heart. I have no idea why she's still a Democrat, but because she votes with us most of the time. But yeah, that's the big thing. Education is the key. You educate, you can change things, but until then, not so much.
Yeah, that's what we've seen, and I've had a couple people on Facebook just try and say, hey, socialism isn't as bad as people say it is, and I'm like, dude, you were talking to the wrong lady.
Talk to some of your grandparents who came here 50, 60 years ago from Eastern Bloc countries that lived it. The church I attend has plenty of folks from Russia and from Ukraine and other places who have lived it, and just sit down with them for an hour. They'll change your mind. But here's another little thing. My favorite question to ask, especially young people, if I'm at a fair or I'm doing whatever and we're talking to folks, is the United States A republic, or B, a democracy?
Republic.
You know that.
I know that now because last time
most people don't.
Wrong.
And then the next question is, oh, okay, so you got that. Great. So can you articulate for me what the difference is? And then they're like, what?
What's the difference between a republic and a democracy?
The easiest way to explain it is a republic is ruled by law, and a democracy is mob rule. Democracy, 51% of the people say, hey, all girls in Amarisa have to be blonde. And there you go. 51% of the people vote that way. You now got to get your hair changed. The best way to explain a republic, it's ruled by law. You remember the old days and you watch the guy robs a bank, runs out into the woods, and the posse goes out and they find the guy and they whip out the rope and they're getting ready to hang the dude up a tree, and I don't know, along comes the sheriff. Sorry guys, take him back to town. He gets a trial where he's judged by a group of his peers. And then is it just 51% of the peers that decide whether he should live or hang? No, all of them. They have to have a unanimous vote. So that is the best way. It's ruled by law. And our republic also protects the minority vote. That's huge. That's where the foundation, of our government is all about. All your things that we do, your voter integrity, electoral college, all those things are designed to protect the minority vote. In a true democracy, it's just mob rule. Whoever gets the most, whoever can sway you based on your feelings one day to say, yeah, I go for that. You get enough people, you change it that direction. That's not the way our government was founded. As a matter of fact, if you look in our Constitution and our Declaration of Independence, you will find the word democracy nowhere. It's not listed, it's not talked about, and many of our founders talked about it eagerly and said, you don't want to do this, because they said democracies ultimately just eat themselves and devolve into anarchy. And then anarchy then devolves into another reign of the Caesars, whoever can come through to save the day. And it's usually the guy who was starting the trouble in the first place.
I know. I just started looking into all this stuff and just understanding it a bit more in the past year. And the things that I've learned has been absolutely incredible. And I'm so fortunate that we live in this country and I'm able to do just more research and understanding it better. And the more that I understand it, the more I'm like, I love America. I'm not going anywhere.
It's a gift. For those of us who are believers, it's a gift from God.
Absolutely.
And if you read the Bible and you look, even if you're not a believer, okay, it was God's idea, okay, you know, 1st and 2nd Samuel, right? That's the whole idea of civil government started off. You know, Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, right? He said, dude, you're doing it all wrong. Don't be trying to do all this yourself. Dole it out to the 10 tribes. You pick a guy there, and they take the main, the problems to them. And if they can't figure that out, then they bring it to you. It was the whole idea of civil government.
Oh, wow.
And that's where it started. So it isn't new. And for those of us who are believers, we need to understand that this is not a new concept. God's the one that created it.
Mm-hmm.
And he also says, while you're here, occupy, have a part in it. Hey, the trumpet's going to sound someday and I'm out of here. I'm not worried about that. But in the meantime, I'm supposed to affect change in a positive, godly way on my world. So here I am, It isn't fun, but we're not supposed to just stay there and say, oh, just take me away, Calgon. No, that's not the way it's supposed to work. You're supposed to be involved. Far too many people in the church, they just say, give to Caesar what is Caesar's and just walk away from it. That's not the context that statement was made in. And the other one is the separation of church and state nonsense. Read the letter that Jefferson actually wrote to the Baptist church. Okay. That's not what he was getting at all. It's basically saying the government needs to stay out of your church, not the church stay out of the government. It's a one-sided argument, but you don't know that if you listen to MSNB nothing, because they're just preaching the nonsense out there. They're pumping socialism, so you're not going to get the truth. Read the actual documents that the founders did and put it in that context. Then you'll know what they really meant.
Oh yeah, I actually have the Bill of Rights and the Declaration of Independence hanging up on my wall.
Very nice. That's awesome. I wish they would have called it something different, the Bill of Rights, because it doesn't describe your rights. It describes all the things the government can't do.
Yes, I've been trying to explain that to people, but it's so hard because they think, oh, the First Amendment says that I can say whatever I want. No. The First Amendment just says the government cannot create any laws to prohibit your right to say whatever
it puts the government in a box. And I love the 10th Amendment because it basically says, if I forgot anything, I can't do that either.
I love it. That's so beautiful. And I really started looking into the Constitution just in the past 6 months. And the more I read it, the more I'm like, why isn't this taught in schools? Why is it unnecessary? Like, if you want to go out there and be an adult, if you want to, like, this should be a prerequisite to vote. Read this, then you can vote.
I agree. And if you step back in history 100 or 150 years, the level of education on a 7th grader, even a 5th or 6th grader, most college graduates couldn't do it. They would have no clue on some of this stuff. It's totally changed. Education has totally changed.
So the next question is about our Recall Kate Brown efforts. This was our second year trying it, and this year we were so close. We were just, I think, 2,700 signatures short.
Yeah, 2670 or something like that.
Yeah. What is next for the Recall Kate Brown effort?
Well, let's first start with the premise of why they did the recall in the first place. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. We wanted to get that on the ballot and let the voters have a say in it, but it never was intended ever to be a one and done thing. Okay. The recall effort, especially the second one, had a lot of planning in it. The timing was done specifically for a reason why it was. The reason we did it in the first place, I was absolutely against recalls before the first one. It's like a waste of time. And why are you going to do that? But when you saw HB 3063, you saw medical freedom, you saw Slavic vote, all these different people come into the forefront, and then you saw timber unity and everything that was going on there. The people were ready for it. They wanted to get rid of this governor. And so, at that point, it's like, okay, now this makes sense. And so they did it. Now, the second one, again, specifically focused on the timing, because right now it finished up and we were hoping to get rid of her, or at least to get her on the ballot, right? You and I talked about the three-legged stool, right? You have tyranny sitting on the stool. It's a three-legged stool. You have three branches of government, right? Legislative, judicial, and executive. We went after the executive leg, almost knocked it off. Okay, now we go on over to the legislative leg, and we can hopefully take some of that back. But the whole point behind this was to raise education about the voters, about what's going on and ways that they can fix their government. And the people that we have touched with that recall effort, they have learned a ton about how the government works. And the next step is the vote, because even if we did get rid of the governor, let's just say, we still have a complicit House and Senate and judicial system that are going to continue to pump out the same garbage laws. Okay, yeah, we can veto a lot of them, but with the current supermajority that we're looking at here, even if I had a great governor, they could overrule him. So it was never intended to be a one and done thing, but rather a step one of many to reclaim your state. And so that's the biggest thing I would say. What's next? November. Let's take that legislative, at least put some balance back to it, to where we can actually have some give and take here, and it's not all a one-sided thing. Right now, they're just pushing through whatever they want. A lot of people are saying, well, why did the courts not stand up? You remember when they, with the COVID stuff, right? And we brought suit against the state of Oregon to stop that stuff. And a court in Eastern Oregon, Baker County, judge said, yeah, you have a good suit. It was thrown out in 5 minutes by the state Supreme Court. Why? Who elects justices? The state Supreme Court. The governor. And then who completes that process? The House and the Senate. Well, if they're in the bag already, you're not going to get anywhere. So that's why it's a multi-step process. You have to clean house here, or you can't fix it. You can slow it down maybe, but you can't fix it. So what's next? November, vote, make a change, vote red, change some things. Even if you don't like some of the stuff that Republicans do, none of them are perfect. They represent the districts they live in. Some of them are kind of squishy. I don't like them either. But back to the power of the first vote, okay? That makes the difference. Seems like I should explain that really quick, if I may.
No, absolutely.
Power of the first vote, absolutely huge. So at the end of the election, if the Republicans have more people in the House and the Senate than the Democrats do, or vice versa, then they get to sit as the president of the Senate or the Speaker of the House, okay? They're elected, they get the majority, they take that spot. Those people decide everything. Whether a bill's going to go to committee or not, whether it's going to get a hearing. If it's going to get a hearing, does it have a 5-minute warning or a 5-day warning? How many things did you guys go to when you were fighting 3063 where you had a 2-hour notice for a freaking public meeting? Absolutely. Especially towards the last part of session. They just ramrod them through. And on that, of those people, when you said, well, who do I need to go talk to tell what I think about this? And you have all the committee chairs, right? All of them were Democrats, weren't they?
Absolutely.
It's because the power of the first vote, the Speaker of the House, President of the Senate assigns the chair and the vice for every committee. Mm-hmm. So the deck is stacked. So we've been playing defense on the Republican side for 30 years. We had an even split back in 2001, 2, 3, somewhere 10, maybe. It was
2012.
Too long ago that I
Yeah.
can't remember the day. But that was the only time we had made an even split and there was actually some compromise done. The rest of the time, it's just been one-sided. So we have to take that back in order to change things. Otherwise, you're playing defense from the start.
Well, and you mentioned just how important this Kim Thatcher versus Shemia Fagan is. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Well, probably the biggest thing is the Secretary of State's is the job that we're talking about. That essentially in Oregon is the lieutenant governor. It's the equivalent in other states.
Yeah.
And the Secretary of State, there's 3 actual seats that are super important here. That we have 2 great candidates for 2 of them, right? Your treasurer, Jeff Goodman, is our candidate for that, and Kim Thatcher, our Secretary of State. I'll get to the importance of that in a second, but the primary thing of the Secretary of State is to govern elections, and she has a huge, or he or she has a huge role in districts. So who draws the lines on where House District whatever is, okay? The Secretary of State has a great amount of influence to that. Secretary of State, immensely important with the redistricting thing. We don't want a whole bunch of gerrymandering to go on because it always favors who's in charge.
Mm-hmm.
And Kim, I've known her for 10 years. And our former Secretary of State, rest his soul, he was a straight up guy. And he didn't play partisan politics here. Dennis was as fair as they come. Many, many Democrats voted for him and absolutely loved him as Secretary of State. And Kim has the same level of integrity and character to carry that on out. And so her effort is really to make this not so much a partisan seat, but to do it the right way and be fair about it. And if that's done, then your voting will be fair. So redistricting is a big piece of it. But the other piece that I was going to mention is your land use board of appeals, your biggest land use body in Oregon that governs what happens in your forests and all these different things. It's comprised of 3 state executives: the governor, the treasurer, and the Secretary of State.
Really?
Okay. We can't get rid of Kate just yet. We got a couple more years before we can go after her and replace her. But if we can take the treasurer and the Secretary of State's office, we can now control what happens on that governing board that affects how land in Oregon is managed. Huge. Can you not see with all the fires recently that has been going the wrong way for a long time? I mean, the state's a freaking tinderbox because they mismanaged the forests. That's why, yeah, we had some fires, and why didn't they get put out? So then you get this wild wind come up out of nowhere, and it just blew up. And, there may be some other reasons why those fires started. We won't get into that. They're still investigating. But nonetheless, the whole thing being a tinderbox to start with is a result of mismanagement for the last 30, 40, 50 years. It's not the way the loggers that's not the way we used to take care of our lands. And you can have a huge impact on that by helping to get those 2 offices back in Republican control.
And that's so good to know, because that's definitely a big issue on everybody's hearts, especially everybody who was affected by the fires. The one that comes to mind is Fred Gerard, and the fact that his house burned down.
That's right.
Mismanaged, that's the best way to say it.
Oh, complicitly mismanaged, unfortunately. I mean, yeah, it's terrible. I really feel sorry for Fred and his family. They just barely got out by the skin of their teeth, as many did. In Marion County, here where I live, is largely affected. Beachy Creek and that other fire that got together, amazing. I mean, I'm in Northeast Salem, and I was like, we better get the RV full of water and maybe get ready to get out of here. I mean, really, never thought I would be thinking about that. But fortunately, the winds turned and went the other direction, and we got some rain, and God bless that, and here we go. I think they're about out now, or they're close. They're getting close to being managed. But
I think this is the first time the Oregonians were actually grateful for the rain.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we're usually saying, oh, no, not more rain, but yeah, it was rough. And there is so many, I have neighbors that were in state and helping to feed people, I mean, the true hearts of Oregonians are coming out from all sides. I mean, I know there's Democrats, Republicans, and everybody there helping people. And, you know, it unfortunately takes a crisis like this to bring out the good in some people. And so, but it's sad, but we will rebuild and carry on because we're a little tough that way.
Absolutely. That's Oregonians for you.
Yeah, right. We're a little stubborn.
Yeah, just smidge. So the next question is about the Republican walkout, and you kind of spoke about this a little bit earlier. I was wondering if you can expand on it. Why is it so important for them to have that ability?
Right, and the reason that question probably comes up is because they're actually, the Democrat side is looking, I think, this upcoming session to do some things to remove the ability for them to do that by removing the need for quorum. Quorum is this thing where you got to have a certain percentage of people there before you can actually do business and take a vote, right? Like in our county central committee, I have to have so many precinct committee folks there before I can do business. And right now, that was our only saving grace. When you got a supermajority out there, and if we take the vote, they're going to pass it. We can't stop it. So the only thing we can do, the last card we have to play, is to simply get up and vote with our feet and walk out, deny quorum, and effectively stop them from doing business. You eliminate that requirement, Republicans don't even need to show up. They're just going to do whatever. Hopefully we won't have a problem because we have the silent majority will kick some butt in November and restore some balance to Oregon. But regardless, I mean, you need that ability no matter what side you're on. I mean, put the shoe on the other foot and it don't fit so good, right? So that is the biggest reason, and the issue surrounding that is requirements for quorum to do business. If you lose that, you're done. You basically now are run by fiat, which is no better than what our governor's been doing. So there's your answer to that question.
Especially if we look back at just, you know, the last session, the bills they were able to just get off the table because of quorum. It was the vaccine bill, that gun restriction bill. What others?
Well, the big one that did was the cap and tax bill. That would have absolutely devastated this state. For those that may not know, that bill made deals with foreign countries that you can't even get out of later, so that the next legislature couldn't undo it. It was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. And Kim Thatcher really explained that well as the senator from our area down here in Kaiser and Newburgh and all that. She was adamant that could not stand. It would ruin Oregon.
Thank God for Republicans.
There's quite a few Democrats that didn't like stuff either.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, but you got to understand, they are pressured immensely by their caucus and their party. If they don't toe the line, you're not getting any funds next time for re-election, et cetera, et cetera. So lots of pressure. I mean, Betsy Johnson, huge amount of pressure against her. I mean, they replaced her from a committee. Peter Courtney, president of the Senate. Remember, he can pick all the chairmen, chairwomen for all the different committees.
Right.
Well, he replaced her on a committee and replaced her with someone to get the vote the way he wanted it to go.
Oh my
So lots of shenanigans got played there last year. And people saw that and they were outraged. So,
yeah,
but that's huge, yeah.
Wow. There's so much politics in politics. It's crazy.
You got to understand how the sausage is made, as they say. It's, you know, that is a big deal. People do not understand how that legislature works. They don't understand. They think, well, why can't Republicans stop it? Well, a lot of reasons. The more you understand how that building works and how it functions, then the more you understand why you have to regain some balance in there. You can't fix it.
I know you really touched on the local city councils. You touched on that. You touched on like senators, Republicans, and the power of the governor.
Right.
But can you talk a little bit about at the county level? Because I don't think people really understand What you guys do at
Okay.
the Marion County Republicans, for example, I didn't even know you guys existed until
Hmm.
a couple months ago. So tell me a little
Well,
bit about what that looks like at a county level.
so question 6 leads into question 7 here.
Yes.
The one, how can citizens be involved, right? Well, the first one is obviously voting. The second one is to actually get some skin in the game and get involved in local politics or whatever. Go watch a school board meeting. Just
Mm,
watch it. Watch a city council meeting. How many people don't even know who their city councilor is that represents them from the ward they live in, or who their mayor is, or who's on their fire board or their water board or whatever, good example, last year in Marion County alone, there was over 75 or 72 or 3 elected seats that were on the ballot across our county. Not everybody had all of them, right? But school boards, water boards, fire boards, et cetera, 70 plus, okay? Those local boards and commissions have a great deal of effect on your life, your water bills, your taxes that you pay for Parks and Rec, or your school district. That comes basically mostly into your property taxes. All of those things most of those are decided by local boards and commissions, and every one of them is available. A lot of them are nonpartisan. You don't have to be Republican or Democrat. You just get, and they don't get paid either. Most all of those are volunteer positions where you have to take some time out of your life and invest in your community. So highly encourage people to learn about all the different board commissions that they could run for, and should. And the reason is simple, because they affect how you and your neighbors live and how much money you come home with in your pocket. So moving to a more partisan part of that question, the power of a PCP and what is a PCP. And the oldies here are thinking like back in the 60s, it's a pretty psychedelic drug. No, it's precinct committee person. And this is true for Republicans and Democrats, okay? Some of us remember, you wouldn't because you're far too young. We used to go vote at a ballot box at your church or your school or something like that, right? And that was called your precinct polling location. A precinct is really nothing more than your neighborhood. Some are bigger, some are smaller. And a precinct committee person is that party's representative of your area to that county's central committee. In other words, you represent your neighbors to the Republican or the Democrat Party, as the case may be, depending on which side you're on. And there is 800 plus slots in Marion County for those positions, both on the Republican and on the Democrat side. Now, a couple of years ago, they did away with the male-female thing. Used to be 2 male, 2 female. It had to have an equal balance. Now it's just persons. You wonder why that happened. And so you can actually go get involved. And if you don't like what the Republicans are doing, or a lot of people equate national politics as the Republican Party to what they see on the national news. Could not be further from the truth. I'm talking about those people that are on those school boards, water boards, fire boards, city councils, all of that. That's what local Republican parties mainly get involved in, and their House reps and their state senators. And then ultimately, yes, your congressional district people and all of that too. But most of the rubber is meeting the road right here at the local level. And so we endeavor to elect more Republican folks that follow our platform. There's the other thing you should read. Go read the Republican platform and compare it to the Democrat platform. It's like socialism over here, freedom over here. It's really obvious. It's a heck of a read. Anyway, back to where I was explaining. If you get involved, you then get to vote at the county level, representing your neighbors on whether or not the county party should spend money on this or do that or endorse this candidate or not or whatever. And then you can get involved directly in campaigns and politics to affect outcomes on a local level. That's really why we exist, okay? And then as you go in, all of those precinct committee people that represent their neighborhoods get together every couple of years, and they decide whether this guy, Jeff, who's the chairman right now, is an idiot and should get thrown out on his ear and bring somebody else in new to replace him, and the secretary and the treasurer, and then the other delegates that we have, which we have 4, that then go to the state level and represent Marion County. So it's the start of the food chain. PCP, as Bill Post put it really well, the most important elected position in the country. You actually get on the ballot, and you are elected by your neighbors to represent them, your Republican neighbors, to represent them at the county level. So that's what a PCP is all about. If you go to our website, got a great write-up on it, a lot of information, www.marioncountygop.org. Okay.
That's perfect. You explained that very well. And just so everybody knows, I am a PCP. I just
Yes,
gave
you are.
my form, so I'm excited to do my part as a citizen.
Yes, ma'am. You will do a great job. I have no
Thank
doubt.
you. I'm excited.
Most people, a lot of folks who are not yet PCPs who are involved, they got involved in the recall, or they're helping at the office, or they're doing whatever, they're already doing the work. That's just the title, right? And it gives you the ability to vote.
Absolutely.
As to what we're doing. You're a voting member now. You have a voice in what we do.
Nice.
So it's not hard. We only have about 250 of them out of 800 slots. So we got plenty of openings, lots of work to do. All of our candidates that are running here need help. I mean, it's that time of year, right? They're making phone calls, dropping literature, doing a whole bunch of things. So if you want to help, let us know. We'd be happy to put you to work. And you don't even have to be a Republican, really. If you're an independent, you don't like what's going on, you want to help us get elected, or even if you're a Democrat, you don't like the idiots that are running on that side, come work for us. It's good. I don't care.
There you go. Surprisingly, I've been hearing that from a surprising number of people that, they're like, oh yeah, we were Democrats, but then 306-3 happened, and we saw how they were spreading lies about Trump that just weren't true, and we just can't be Democrats anymore. The Democrat
The walkaway movement is real.
Absolutely.
And one little information bit for you on the last recall. I haven't seen the numbers for this one, but the last recall, over a third of people who signed that were not Republicans, and over half of those were Democrats. So there's plenty of people in the Democrat Party that do not like Miss Kate and her crew.
Amazing.
I can only wait to see the numbers from this one. I mean, it's going to be crazy. Anyway.
Well, and that just proves that no matter what your party is, in the end, we all just kind of have the same values. That's what I believe in my heart. We have a lot more in common than what our values say.
You are so right. You are so right. And truth be told, I am not a fan of the two-party system. Okay, I really am not. I'm involved in one of them because it's the tool I need to fix the car. Okay, it's not that I like it. Matter of fact, Washington right now would be furious with us how we're running this country. It was never intended to be a two-party gig like it is now. But here we are. So you got to use the tools you have to fix the job. Like I said, I was an independent for years, couldn't stand either party. Guess what? I still can't.
So
but I got to get involved in one of them to fix it.
Yeah.
What's that?
Who are you voting for president then, Jo Jorgensen or Trump?
Who?
Jo Jorgensen. Is that her name? She's the president running in the Independent Party.
Right. And no. I will say this. Trump has his faults, okay? He does. He's maybe not the most eloquent guy in the world. He tends to piss people off. Hey, whatever. I don't vote for a president because I necessarily like him. I vote for him because he gets the job done. And that is one thing that I can say our president has done very good with. I usually like what he does. He's just a little rough around the edges. But again, I'm not voting for him because of his personality. And everybody's got this big thing, they're all mad at what he tweets and whatever. Who cares? How's he running the country, people? That's what you should be thinking about, not what the guy tweets. Really, I mean, get back to the business of what's really going on here. It's just the media that's just throwing him out to lunch. They're as complicit as can be. So I really wish people would vote with their brain instead of their emotions. Serious, because they'd vote a lot different. And the last parting thing, I'll quote Chris Ann Hall for you, because she is a person I have met personally a number of times. I helped her tour Oregon here a few years ago. I actually got her a meeting with our House caucus on the Republican side, and she actually gave a nice talk to them on how the constitutional authorities of a representative and a senator are. Very smart woman. But basically, the quote I always recite from her is, "How will you know that you've lost your freedoms if you didn't know what they were in the first place?" And you don't know that until you learn about our country, its founding, and the rights and freedoms that you possess inherently by God and that are affirmed by our Constitution.
Absolutely.
So there you go.
Well, Jeff, thank you so much. This was an absolutely wonderful interview. I'm so glad that we scheduled it. And do you have anything else you think the citizens need to hear from you?
Vote, please. Take a stand. I get it. There's a lot of people out there that are scared and they don't know what's going to happen. I expect there will be problems after our election. I'm a prepper. I'm a ham radio operator. I'm a Second Amendment guy. And, I expect there will be trouble because we are in a fight for our country's life. There is no doubt in my mind. Study that history. And if you haven't seen and figured out by now that we are in a battle between socialism and capitalism for the life of this country, you need to wake up, because we are. And Trump is just the guy that just rattled everybody's cages. I mean, he's not the traditional politician kind of guy. And that's the reason that the left just went completely insane when he got elected. Just completely nuts. And unfortunately, I did expect some trouble. So be prepared November 4th. Things could get a little ugly. But you got to stand up. Be counted first and foremost, and be willing to fight for your country. And you start that. That's the first and foremost thing you can do, is by voting. You want to do more? Call me. We'll talk.
That was wonderful, Jeff. Thank you so much for having this. This is my second interview, and I'm still learning the ropes with everything, and I'm already more comfortable with you. The information you shared was absolutely invaluable, so I so sincerely appreciate you being here.
No, I appreciate the opportunity.